lesson.
Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here on this, this is the fourth Sunday of July, and this is my third time here and final one for this time around, and I just want to express my thanks. It's been a real blessing for me to meet you, get to know you in this way, and to eat your cookies. Oh, my cookie. Yeah, I brought some to share with you, but I have enjoyed it. So, well, thank you. So years ago, I preached a Christmas Eve sermon. That's what we Methodists call it. We call it a sermon, lesson, but I preached a Christmas Eve sermon. And you try to give some thought to Christmas Eve. And so I titled it, "Will This Be the Year We Listen?" Okay? So I titled it, "Will This Be the Year we Listen?" And in the beginning was the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God in the beginning. Through Him all things were made, and without Him nothing was made that had been made. In Him, meaning in the Word was life. And the light the Word is to shine light upon all of humankind. The Word has a job. That's what it's supposed to do, shine light upon all of humankind. And then it says the light, the Word, shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome the Word. So those are the first 5 verses, my version, of the Gospel of John. And in those first 5 verses, they birth a word to the world. In the beginning was the Word. There's no baby story. There's no baby that gets born in the Gospel of John. It's a word. It's a word. And the Word comes to speak directly to the world. In the beginning was the Word. So being aware of that, you kind of back up in Scripture, and you're aware that throughout the Old Testament, God had used prophets to speak the Word. And you can read the stories of those prophets, and in each one of those prophets, there's a story about how God gives directly the Word to the prophet to speak. One prophet gets the Word seared on the prophet's lips to speak the Word. Ezekiel's my favorite. Ezekiel, the prophet, Old Testament prophet, Ezekiel is like eating a bowl of alphabet cereal every morning. Ezekiel literally ingests the Word to speak the Word and goes out. But it seems time after time after time as these prophets speak the Word, it seems no one listens. No one listens. And so God bursts a word into the world. And I thought, isn't it creative? I'm asking, will this be the year we listen? I thought that was stunningly creative. Right? Well, in late April, while Debris was still on the island, I called her up. And I asked her if she would meet me for coffee. I said, will you meet me for coffee? I think everybody should have I call it a 911 list in your pocket. Wherever you live, you should have a 911 list. And those are the people you get in touch when you need somebody to listen to you and to be with. I call it, my 911 list. Wherever I go, I try to find people who can be on my 911 list. I'm human, I need that. And so I needed someone, so I called Debris. Debris was one of the first persons I met when I came to live here in Key West. It was over dinner one night at a mutual friend's home. And I experienced then, during that dinner, we sat by each other, I experienced then what I experience now. And Davery's a pretty good listener. Don't you think? That's a gift. She's a good listener. So in April, when I needed someone to listen to the words that I wanted to speak, I needed to speak for my own health, I called Davery. I said, will you meet me for coffee? And we met right back there in one of those rooms. I think you call it your library, or is that it, or something like that? Yeah, that's where we met. We had coffee there. And for nearly 2 hours, I spoke, and she listened. She listened. And then on my way out the door, I looked down and I noticed there was the Daily Word sitting on that table or something back there. So I grabbed a copy of the Daily Word. And I took with me the Daily Word for May and June. All right, and I took it home. You know, the Unity Devotional each day offers up a daily word. And I soon discovered it was a daily word that was given to us to shine light on our day. To shine light upon us for that particular day. And that's the job of the word, is to shine light. I remember when I ran out May, June, and all of a sudden I ran out of the daily word, and I had to get back here and get a daily word. It was a new 2 months. I'm the kind of person who forwards. Anybody here do Wordle? All right, if I do well on Wordle, I'm the kind of person, give me your email and I'll forward it to you and tell you how well I've done. I'm that kind of person. Poor David, my husband, I'm sure he gets tired of, especially if I get it on the second word. I've never gotten it on the first, but if I get it on the second word, I'll forward it to you and I'll let you know how well I've done. That's my way of telling you I love words. I love words. Heck, in college, I was a journalism major at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, where I was taught in journalism school. I was a news editorial major, and in journalism school, you're taught that the first 30 words back then, the first 30 words of your news story are the most important. And you need to write them in a concise manner. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. And tell the folks who are reading it what had taken place. Because people don't have a long time in the morning to read an entire story. The lead is the most important part was the most important part of any news story. It was to tell you the facts. Now, if you happen to read a newspaper or wherever you get your news, the first 30 words tell you somebody's opinion. And we really have moved from a fact to opinion. And so you kind of have to sort through all of that. But those first 30 words were to shine light on the story. And that's what I was taught. Words were to tell a story. I learned how to write in part because I read a newspaper. Every morning as a child, I'd sit back there, I'd get the newspaper, and I'd go out on our front porch, and I'd read the newspaper. And I'd read those first 30 words, and I'd think, I wish I could write like that. I'm not making that idea. That's how I learned to write. But do you know that not all words shine light? Not all words shine light. You can live right here in paradise, and not all words shine light here upon people. So when the Gospel of John says, in the beginning was the Word, yeah. And it's the job of the Word to shine light. You have my attention. You have my full attention. So this week, if you go back this week, the words whose task was to shine light upon our path this past week, we started with protection, and then blessing, and then forgiveness, and peace. And my personal favorite word of the week that was to shine light upon us, surprises. Surprises. And then self-care. And today it's authentic. So when I began reading the Daily Word this last April, I decided, this is a composition book that I buy a couple of these every year because I know I'm going to do some writing and I want to keep track of my notes. I decided I was going to use one of my composition books and keep some notes about the Daily Word, about what I get out of it, what I want to remember about it, what it means to me. Protection. And right there in protection, wherever I am, God is. And that's something to carry around with you all day, isn't it? Wherever I am, God is, from Psalm 91. Beautiful hymns written from Psalm 91. Wherever I am, God is. Tuesday, the blessing, it was of nature. We share the world. We share the world with God. And in that world, God uses others, God uses nature to bless us. How can you not walk around here? But sometimes we need that reminder. Wednesday, forgiveness. And Wednesday was a reminder that sometimes, while we forgive others, it's also wise that we spend some time forgiving ourselves. That's a great word to shine light on our path. And then Thursday, peace. From Psalm 85. Righteousness meaning walking in the path of right way with God. Righteousness and peace kiss each other. I carried that around with me all day. I'd never thought of that metaphor in that way. That righteousness and peace kiss each other. Friday, our God is a God who saves. And we're to be joyful and happy. And then Saturday, I made some notes in between here. Self-care. That you honor your divinity when you care for yourself. Again, something to carry around with you today. And then today we come to the word authentic. The word authentic. And what a beautiful word. So in the beginning, the divine God gifted the world with what? The divine word. In the beginning. And God did that because God wants to shine light upon our paths. So that even in the darkness, because of the word, there is no darkness. Because that word's shining that light ahead of us. So I asked one time on Christmas Eve, not having read the Daily Word, I asked on Christmas Eve, will this be the year we listen? I think about that question now. I've thought about it this past week, and I think about it now, and I want you to know, after my experience with this, after my experience with all of you these past 3 weeks, after trying to immerse myself in this since April, will this be the year we listen? I want you to know that question pains me. It pains me that I ask it. It just pains me. After spending time with all of you these past 3 weeks, after spending time with the Daily Word these past 3 months, since grabbing that copy when I came out of that office back in April, after Davey had just spent 2 hours listening to me, I don't think that was the right question. I don't think that was the right question. Will this be the year we listen? So I graduated from University of Nebraska-Lincoln, the esteemed University of Nebraska-Lincoln School of Journalism in 1977. Okay? And for the next 7 years, I taught English and journalism. In other words, I taught words at a high school, at Lincoln High School in Lincoln, Nebraska. I taught words. I taught the high school yearbook, I taught the school newspaper, and I also taught a couple classes of 10th grade English. So they would have been, 15-year-olds. I taught 15-year-olds. I taught the words of, I tried to think of all the books I taught in 10th grade English. A Tale of Two Cities, The Outsiders, A Catcher in the Rye, A Separate Piece by John Knowles. I think that was my favorite book to teach. What a beautiful story. A separate piece. And I think about those days and I think, I got paid to do this. Really, I got paid to do something that I totally loved and enjoyed doing. So on the first day of school of 1983, the very first period, I had a 10th grade English class. And this was a school, back then, 10th grade was your first year in high school. It wasn't 9th grade, and it was 10th grade, and this was a large school of 2,000, and all these kids were coming into this school from various parts of the city, so they really didn't know each other, but they knew a few people. And so you'd come into that class, and you remember when you came into a new class, and you didn't know anybody, and you look around, and you, oh my God, it's Sherry, I know her. And you run over to sit by Sherry. Right? And so those kids kind of divided, first they divided themselves in that way, and I expected that. So the very first period of the day, it was their very first moment, seconds in high school. There they were in that room. And so what do you do as a teacher in those days? The first thing you do is you have a task and you got to do it, and what's the first thing you do? You call attendance. You take your computer sheet and you call roll. And there were supposed to be 35 students in the class. It was a large class, and I was calling roll, and in their first ever high school class, and I did it alphabetically. So I'm going down, starting with A, I'm doing alphabetically, and I begin to work through it, and I'd call the person's name, and I'd look, Christopher Price, and I'd look, and he'd go here, and I'd look at him, trying to remember his name, and piece all of that together. And they can acknowledge that name. So very early on in that process, I called the name Victor Day, D-A-Y. So he was very early up in that process. And I called Victor Day, and I looked out, and I waited for a hand to go up, or yes, or whatever they wanted to say, I'm here. And there was none. So to be sure, I said the name again. I said, Victor Day. Teachers had a way, I can have a teacher's voice. I assure you of that. It's Victor Day here. And then there was a pocket of students, I remember they were over to my right, and they all started to laugh. They all started to laugh. I thought, what are you supposed to think when you say somebody's name and everybody's laughs? And so I said, okay, let me in on it. What's so funny? Something like that. I looked out at him. What's so funny? And I don't remember the exact answer, but it was something like, well, you'll find out. So what are you supposed to do with that? As a teacher and with 15-year-olds, what's so funny? Well, you'll find out. I'm like, ooh, okay. And so the next day came. I thought, well, maybe, it's Tuesday. And the next day came, and I called the name again. And again, once again, there was no Victor Day. But there was the laughter. I thought, oof, I need to find out before I have to find out. So I went down to the counselor's office at lunch that day. And I went in, I began to ask around. I said, I have this student that's supposed to be in my first period class, and he's not here. And his name's Victor Day, and I'm just kind of curious. And let me know about him. And well, he's not here, and he's still with his parents. And I think that he was back in Boston. And they're on vacation, and they'll be back on the Tuesday after Labor Day. Yeah, okay, so I quit calling his name. So the Tuesday after Labor Day came that next week. It was Tuesday morning. And again, I'm looking around. I didn't see anybody's face that I didn't recognize. So that meant that there was no Victor Day in the class. And so I began the lesson, and we always started the year with a separate piece. I remember that. So I began the lesson on a separate piece. And I'm standing there, and the door was like here, and I could hear the door open. I could hear the door open, and so the door opened up, and I could, teachers can sense your presence behind them. And I could sense somebody's presence behind me, and those students over here, the pocketed laughter folk, they began to laugh. And I thought, ha, it's Victor Day. He's finally here. And so I did. I turned around, and I saw what I would have to call, I don't know how else to say it. Let me just say, I saw Victor Day. Okay. And Victor Day was Victor Day. God bless him. And I saw him, and I turned around, and I said, you must be Victor Day. And he's sitting there doing all these stuff and trying to get everybody's attention, and I'm like, oh, Lord. And I've already been predisposed to this. And I'm not. And I said, well, it's nice of you to join us. And I pointed to a seat. I go, now go over there and sit down and shut up. And I'm not kidding you, that's what I said. Not all words that come out of our mouths shine light, do they? And we never know in a moment when we're going to say words that don't shine light on somebody's path. We never know when that's going to happen. Not all words shine light, because when they don't, those words don't come from God. Have you ever been labeled with a word that you don't like? I kind of think that was Victor Day's story. So the year went on from September to May, and I'm telling you, Victor Day could have taught A Tale of Two Cities. That's how smart he was. He was a brilliant child. He was a brilliant 15-year-old. I think I had him teach I think A Tale of Two Cities has how many books? 3 books? I remember right? I think I had him teach the 3rd book. Why don't you just teach it for us? I mean, he was a brilliant person. Probably one of the smartest 15-year-olds I had ever taught. And not only was he smart, he was kind. And not only was he kind, he was really funny. He was really funny. And he was still, in the end, guess what? Victor Day. It was a great combination of a human being. That next summer, I left teaching for seminary in Kansas City. And I was packing up my room because I had to go in there and get things, my belongings that I wanted to take. And I had decided to do that in the middle of the summer, so I had to get it done. And it was in August, and students were drifting in and out of the building to come back and do things. The school was getting ready to start. And there in my room was Victor Day. He just came in the door, and he says, Mr. Johnson, I understand that you're leaving. I said, yeah, I am. And he goes, I'm going to miss you. And I just looked at him and I thought, well, Victor, I'm going to miss you too. I'm going to miss you too. And 2 weeks later, I had started seminary, and I remember I was in my room, and I had a phone in there, and the phone, you didn't have cell phones back then, and the phone rang, and it was the principal at Lincoln High School, Mr. Nelson. And he was calling me, and he wanted me to know, or his parents wanted me to know that Victor had died, and that Victor had taken his own life. He wanted me to know that. I was stunned. I was beyond stunned. I wrote this, I can tell you this, I wrote this when I was working on this the other day. It brought tears to my eyes to think about it. And of course I went back to the funeral. It was in a little chapel at a mortuary, and the room was full, and you look around at all those faces. I might as well have taken roll for first period 10th grade English, because they were all there. Telling this story will always make me sad. Victor had to absorb some pretty unfortunate words, as though these words became him. It's not about listening to the word that God gives to us to shine light upon the world. It's not about listening. It is about becoming. It's about becoming the words that God sends into our life to shine light upon us all. And today, it's authentic. Authentic. I live proudly as my authentic self. Authenticity means being who I am with confidence. I'm a divine being. I am a child of God. I take my place in the world with joy, knowing that I belong here as much as everyone else. Rooted in my divinity, I celebrate my humanity by being my authentic self. Romans 8:14, for we are all led by the Spirit of God, and we are children of God. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will not overcome it, so that the word might shine light upon your path today and tomorrow and until we meet again. God bless you all. And we're going to